Frank, Thomas, and Kirby enter the break room at approximately 12:25 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. Each man holds various containers designed for holding food and drink. As they lazily slump into their fiberglass chairs that were haphazardly pushed under their table by their previous uses, the room echoes of violent pops and entangled straw gyps as Tupperware lids fly open and Velcro bags release their treasures. God damn it, Thomas rolls his eyes. Frank, with a mouthful of cold pizza, mumbles in empathy. Wife pack you tuna salad again, huh? She knows I hate this stuff. I swear, I've reached my breaking point with this shit. Why don't you just pack your own lunch? Kirby attempts to speak through teeth caked with salad. A drip of ranch falls from Kirby's lip, collides with the table. Thomas just glares at Kirby in disdain. You don't get it, man. I've told her like 50 times. I don't like tuna salads. But does she listen? No. Thomas raises his hand to his forehead. I swear I'm up to here with this. Well, at least you're not like that one guy. Frank wipes his mouth on the recital pepperoni grease with a cheap paper napkin. What one guy? Thomas looks at Frank in slight confusion. You talking about that guy from CompuTools? I heard about that guy on the news last week, Kirby chimes in. He was already digging into his pudding cup. Thomas spins around to Kirby. What the hell are you guys talking about? Frank wipes off his hands with another napkin, folds his hand in front of him, and leans in quietly. Thomas and Kirby follow suit. You see, there was this guy over at CompuTools. Nice guy, I hear. What was the name? Frank concentrates on the ceiling, searching for a name. Suddenly, Frank snaps his fingers. Phil Curbston. Anyway, he was one of those diligent workers. Never complained, always got his work done before the deadline. Hell, he would even stay late to make sure that his perfect record was never tarnished. Thomas chimed in. Ugh, I hate those guys. Well, supposedly, CompuTools hired this new hotshot manager. Basically rocked up from corporate, you know, never lifted a finger in his life and gets to skip right to the front. Thomas shook his head. Exactly. So this guy was brought into, Frank raised his finger, quotations, help. And since this douchebag really didn't know anything about CompuTools products, he would just bark and micromanage everyone else. Everyone in the office was buzzing. We're gonna quit. Let's get HR involved. This guy is completely heartless. The usual empty water cooler promises. Everyone was in a tiff, except Phil. Phil would mind his own business and do his work with a silent smile. He would never go as far as asking the new manager, anything else I can do to help? Well, I don't know if the manager deliberately planned to be this malicious or if it was just common nature for him. But he got this notation in his head. See how far he could bend Phil until he broke. Starting the very next day, the manager threw the biggest workflow on Phil's desk and barked out, I need this done by 5 o'clock today or you can just pack your shit now. Or something to that effect. Phil quietly turned to face the manager, smiled his calm, innocent smile, and said, Sure thing, boss. 5 o'clock rolls around, and Phil walks into the manager's office and proudly places the completed report onto the man's desk. Here you go, boss. The manager looked at from polishing and buffing his prized 600-pound marble desk to the completed pile of paper with a look of complete shock. How could one man complete that report in only 7.5 short hours? His eyes then shifted from the report to glare viciously at Phil's calm, lucid face. Anything else I can do to help? Smiled Phil. The manager simply shook his head in disbelief. Okay, well, I'm going to head out for the day, sir. You have yourself a great evening. The manager was flabbergasted. He stilled his motivations and vowed that he would try harder to break this man's spirit by the end of the week. Well, the end of the week comes by, and went, and still, Phil was as cheerful as ever, always responding to every outrageous task with a happy, sure thing, then turning around and completed work to the manager at the end of the day with a pleasant, anything else I can do to help? Well, this went on for a few weeks, and the manager, now seeing the current efforts were fruitless, now deciding that maybe he needed to up the ante, the manager would now bombard Phil with major accounts and legendary business trips and seditious conferences, all to quell his passion that Phil must be broken. But with every new, more difficult task, Phil would embrace it. Sure thing, boss. And come back with a sunny, anything else I can do to help? The manager, now at his wits' end, had one more trick up his sleeve. Although his lack of concentration on the job he was hiring for was beginning to come under fire, he wanted to give it one more shot before he had to face the firing squad. He got it in his head that if he breaks in between each 8-hour day that was allowing Phil to wind down, regain his bearings, get a good night's sleep, and come back in the next day ready for more. So with that in mind, he gave Phil the budget report for the following year and told him, I don't care how long it takes, but you cannot leave your desk until we trim at least $5 million off next year's budget. As always, Phil replied with the trademark, sure thing, boss. The manager turned away knowing that this tax would be Phil's breaking point. And like a clockwork, Phil came in the manager's office with a complete budget and handed it to him. Anything else I can do to help? The manager looked over the budget. I don't really like these numbers. The manager threw the report back at Phil. Do it all over again. Do it right. Phil smiled, sagged a little, but soon rebounded and turned and headed back to his desk. The manager saw Phil's smile buckle for just a moment, and he chuckled to himself that his plan is finally working. 8 o'clock rolls around, and Phil comes back to the manager's office. But Phil looks a little bit different. His hair a bit disheveled, his horn-rimmed glasses now on his forehead. One corner of his shirt had become untucked from his pants. Phil strides and carefree. Phil hands the report to the manager and expressively utters, anything else I can do to help, sir? The manager, now seeing victory close at hand, looks at the report. Phil, I think you made some miscalculations here. The manager hands the report back to Phil. Do it again. And remember what I said. You stay until it is complete. Phil, dejected, defeated, disappointed, looked at the report in his hands, wiped the sweat from his brow, and scratched the back of his neck. The nearly broken man headed back to his desk to correct the errors. As soon as Phil left the office, the manager closed the door and danced a twisted victory dance. Phil was nearly gone. The manager was going to sleep good that night. At 11 o'clock, Phil trudged back into the manager's office and handed him the complete and corrected report. Exhausted, Phil asked, is there anything else I can do to help, sir? The manager, now a shining example of pure arrogancy, throws the report on the floor, exclaimed, why did you do the budget for next year? I asked you to do the budget for this year. Can't you even follow simple instructions? I want you to march back to your pathetic little cube, and you are going to stay all night if you have to until you do exactly what I ask you to do. Or, so God help me, I will find someone that can do it. Now, no one really knows what happens next, but some of the late-night stranglers who heard the managers try to claim that as soon as he was finished, Phil took off his glasses, cleaned them off with the corner of his shirt that was still untucked, put them in his glasses back on, and closed all the blinds in the manager's office that faced with the rest of the office. What came from the room after that was a thunderous crash and a high-pitched shriek. The door flew open and the manager bolted out of the room with his glasses shard in his hair, bleeding profusely from his face, screaming, "Call security! Call security!" Witnesses then claim that they saw Phil calmly walk out of the office, blood spattered about his shirt and hands. He held a letter opener in his right hand, now stained with blood. Phil's calm and happy expression was lost to a visage one person can only describe as berserk. Phil's brow furrowed, scrunching his eyebrows into wide arches. His teeth dangled, and, according to one person, appeared sharp and pointed. His skin, once pale and fair, now red and scaly. His slick hair now faded widely above his head and danced of its own accord. Phil marched towards his cowering manager. "Sure thing, sure thing, sure thing." Phil continued to chant these two words over and over, and the volume of his voice continued to climb until he was shrieking. Phil destroyed everything in his path to get to the manager, who was scrambling for the elevator. He turned over the cubicle walls, hurled the office printer, overturned the desk, but was still marching at a steady pace. Not once did Phil's gait increase in speed. The elevator doors finally opened, and the manager quickly darted inside. As he frantically pounded on the door close button, Phil's arm thrust inside the cabin as the doors were closing. The manager let out a girlish cry for help, and then Thomas, now sitting on the edge of his seat, blinked. "Yeah?" "Well," Frank continued, "a security hauled him away. The folks that stuck around for the whole ordeal said that they never heard Phil use any profanity ever, but on that day they heard him curse words so vile that they almost sounded like they were in some sort of ancient tongue, some demonic language. Only by the grace of God was they. First, that was Phil was kicking and screaming the entire time, and was hardly recognizable. Second, that the manager couldn't stop crying, and thirdly, the most bizarre, was they realized what made the thunderous crash in the manager's office. The 600-pound marble desk, the manager's prized possession, now lay in pieces out the office window. "So that's it? What happened after that? There must be more. There must be at least a trial," Thomas exclaimed. There was a trial, but Phil was deemed mentally unstable to serve trial, so he was committed to the state hospital over in Brookfield. And eventually, everything died down and returned to normal. The manager was brought in to see corporate, and he was actually let go because not only did the security cameras record what Phil did to the manager in the office, but they also recorded the manager's outburst on Phil that caused him to snap in the first place. "Just desserts, I say," Thomas commented. Kirby just shook his head as he started to clean up his empty containers. "Well, there's a real punchline, and this I got from Sally Boyd over at the CompuTools. She used to be like the manager's admin. After the manager was let go, he cleaned out his temporary desk, and to pass the time, he had the radio on. The manager left his office for a moment to get some boxes. As he returned to his office, she heard the radio announce Phil Curbson, commented to Brookfield State Hospital on Monday, was discovered missing from the cell earlier today. The manager froze in horror, and Sally turned around to see the manager's expression. The door violently slammed in her face, knocking her backward onto the ground. As she regained from her fall, she told me that she could clearly hear the manager pleading for his life. She distinctly heard, "Please, don't. I'll do anything you want." And then a familiar, calm, and soothing voice came from behind the door. "Anything I can do to help?" Sally pounced on the door, but it was locked. She tried to go through the window, but the blinds were mostly drawn, so the only thing see the fall of arms and legs. Sally kicked at the door repeatedly and shouted, "Someone please help!" But it was too late. As soon as the commotion ceased from inside the office, Sally heard the knob click to signal that it had been unlocked. With her tears in her eyes, Bella slowly reached for the knob and opened the door to reveal a gruesome scene. The manager splayed open from his throat to his pelvis, ribcage and organs exposed. His hands twisted to conjure knobs of flesh and knuckle. His face wrapped into an expression of unrelenting anguish and fear. Eyes wide, jaw locked, nose broken and twisted. In his left hand, its last caddy drawn to a close, was the manager's own heart. Sally and some of the onlookers who had finally gained access to the room then looked up to see the following message scribbled on the bare, digity yellow office wall. "We were wrong. Guess he had a heart after all." Jesus! Thomas had to hold back from vomiting by covering his mouth. After that, CompuTools shut down that office. I think they turned it into a megabyte. Frank finished his toast with a solemn sip of coffee. Thomas rubbed his eyes. "Whoa, wait a minute, whatever happened to Phil?" This is when I'm supposed to say, that's the strange thing, but it's really not that strange. When they finally opened up the office, the only person in there was the manager. Sally even said she never actually saw Phil. She only heard his voice. Or at least what sounded like his voice. And he hasn't been seen since. "That story is complete bullshit," Kirby exclaimed. Frank and Thomas spun around to glare at Kirby for breaking the mood. "What?" Thomas inquired. "Like you know exactly what happened." "I just know that that's not exactly what happened," Kirby calmly stated as he adjusted his horn-rimmed glasses. "Okay, hotshot. How do you know?" Frank jested. "Because." Kirby leaned in close. Frank and Thomas matched Kirby's movement. "The hospital doesn't know I'm gone yet." Just then, Kirby's manager leaned into the break room. "Hey, Kirb, I need you to do something for me." "Sure thing, boss." As Kirby stands up to leave the now still break room, Frank and Thomas glanced down at Kirby's security badge for his full name. Kirby Phillips.